Hi, Andy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, John. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, nice peaceful day today. So I've had a day of rest from the day job, especially
Okay.
to chat to you. So
So you're across the pond there in Manchester, I understand?
I am indeed in Manchester, England. Yes,
Ah,
that's where I'm born and that's where I live. Yes.
all right. Yeah, there's some good music. I remember in the 80s coming from Manchester. I always wanted to go there just for the sake of the music. I happen to like the Smiths a lot, so yes.
Ironically, with Morrissey from them, he used to
Hmm.
go to school with a dear friend of mine. Actually,
Oh,
they were in the same class at school.
interesting, interesting.
Yeah. So
So you have written a lot of books. I'll just let you lead the way, and I'm sure you want to talk about your main book, your novel that you just written. But before we do that, you're a very interesting person from everything that you're involved in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
sure. Okay. Creative wise, yo, blimey. Yeah, I started writing when I was 10 and I'm 52 now. So started off as a poet. I've done 10 full-length poetry books. I'm now retired from that. The last two were called From the Diabetic Ward, Volume 1, which is about my struggle with diabetes. I'm diabetic. And the last one was called Changing Carriages at Birmingham New Street. And that's kind of led into my novel in a way, because that's about two characters and love affair. So, and after that, I do my own podcast, Spoken Label. I do a joint one with a friend of mine, Grant, and my wife Amanda, called Not the TV Guide. And I do ambient music on the name of Ocean in the Bottle. And I also co-run Cholton Cum Hardy's leading spoken word open mic night called Speakeasy.
Hmm.
Sleep is optional.
Oh yes, of course it is. Yes, I think I've only slept 5 hours a night since I quit music at 33, and who knows, maybe that led to my brain aneurysm. Apparently, we need sleep to avoid those kind of situations. I don't know.
True.
Yeah, sleep is not my favorite thing to do either. So we're talking about a book called Birth, is that correct?
Yes, Birth is my debut novel. It got to the stage when I was finishing off my last poetry book last year, or year before that was actually really finished. And I'd been looking at this novel for a few years before that, and it felt like it was an actual progressive time to actually finish off my first novel, Birth, because it's running a couple of levels, that is, because Birth is as much as the birth, it's about the birth of creativity of a young writer. It's also, you could argue, it's like a birth is like the next stage of my writing.
Okay, yeah, sure. And birth can be associated with a number of different things, but in your case, in this novel, you're associating with writing. So is it it's a fiction, obviously, since it's a
Yes,
novel, right?
fiction. Yes,
So,
fiction. There's
so what kind of conflicts are in this fiction?
it's coming of age story because I set on about a 17-year-old lad's shoulders, really, growing up in an area called Cholton cum Hardy, which is in South Manchester in England. And I grew up a lot in that area. So what I wanted to do was tell a fictional story in an area that I knew really well. So I could then add the fiction to it, but give it the realism of an area that I know really, really well to this day.
Okay. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but would that area be known as a working class area,
Yeah,
a
yes, but it's
rough
very
and tumble place?
oh well, it was back then. That's
Okay.
less so nowadays.
All right.
Less so nowadays. Yeah, it's still a very cosmopolitan area. And it's like it's at that time, certainly you're looking at 17 or 18, all that there was to do was either be in a band or drink after work. So my character was at college and he started getting into the drinking game, then joined a band basically and fell in love.
Oh, okay. My kind of story. Yeah, I like the British coming of age stories. I was a big fan of Quadrophenia and what that was based on.
Ooh, that's a good
So,
one, yeah.
what kind of things happen without giving the story away? He joins a band, he falls in love and all that, and does have some drinking. But what what bad things happen? What kind of bad things happen?
He basically hangs around with, makes friends. Some of them, shall we say, are not the best people to be around.
Mhm.
It's where it's as much as there's a coming of age show, it's also the loss of innocence as well. Because the character is a very young man when the story starts. It takes place around about over an 18-month period. And by the end of it, I've not given anything away too much. I'm trying to be careful what I say. But it's a case of by the end of the book, he's come from a child to a man.
Right.
And then basically he's realised by the end of it, what he wants from his life is not necessarily what he's going to get for hanging on these people.
Isn't that true? Yeah. I know. I like this. I love
That's
stories
why
like
I think I think you're looking at that age of any person, particularly a creative person, and I can guess from I know what I've read up on you, John, you're similar to me in the sense of I've been creative all my life, and you are in one way or another, and I know you have as well.
For sure.
You do when you're at that sort of impressionable age, and that's what I want to try and cover. Because I couldn't certainly have the guts to front a band when I was 17. No way. No way. I was too quiet and shy for that. But I wanted to look at that and show you how he changes on it. And the hardest thing in the book for me, John, actually was in the book is there's extracts of song lyrics in there of like he's writing on the book, and you can see bits coming out. I was actually trying to channel myself to what I was like at 17, and then putting lyrics like a 17-year-old wrote back in when the book was set. So it's a bit. It was an interesting challenge.
Okay. But you yourself also write music, I understand.
Yes, well, not as tuneful as that. What that book is implying, yeah. I could be. I bet I've fronted a few bands over the years. Some have done better than others, but yeah, the one I do nowadays, I do one called Ocean of the Buckle, and that's when you're heading into more like Brian Eno, Harold Budd territory, really. And a bit like Soviet France, so it's more like the minimalism, ambient music, and I've loved that sort of stuff since way into my 20s. So that's the sort of music I do, and I've done quite a few albums under that name. Quite a few.
Wow. I'm talking to someone who knows Soviet France. That doesn't happen to me every day.
Oh, I know of them. I've never met them.
No, but I had some of their albums. I don't have albums anymore. Got rid of them all. What a shame that is. But sure, I was a radio disc jockey in an alternative radio station in Toronto, and that's where I learned about stuff like that. So
you do. It's I've got my love of music's come from basically when in the early 90s, really. And I accidentally got together with a real experimental musician that I know, was a friend of mine in Bournemouth. And at the time, we ended up forming a quite extreme band called DIH. And that's a story of another podcast, but the best way to put it would be is we did about 6 gigs. Some of them didn't quite go to plan. That's all I'm going to say now. But yeah, and then from that, really, it kind of led me further in the music. And it's always run 2 different hands, really, bizarrely, of the music and the writing.
Sure.
It's crossed over, but you know what I mean? It's never been running in the same level all the time. So it's been a bit of a weird one.
Well, for me, I started writing books when I was 58. And since then, I'm 66 now. Since then, my writing of music has gone down because I'm concentrating on the written word. Do the 2 art forms conflict for you as well?
Sometimes, yeah. It's depends what really, because on what level. Because I've had a band going with my wife before now. She's a great vocalist in her own right, and I've been known to help her write the lyrics out in conjunction sometimes. But they used to stay separate. I think I might be a bit odd where I can train my brain to look at 2, 3, 4 art forms and keep them all separate. And I know it's not as easy said as it is done, that really.
Here's a question I can ask you because I don't get a chance to talk to someone like you. In fact, I don't think I have so far. I thought it was difficult enough to get people to listen to my recorded music that I composed, whether they be songs or ambient pieces or experimental pieces. That was difficult enough. But all that would take is for someone to listen to it, say 4 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, and it's done. Then I write books, and I'm finding that is so much more difficult to get people to actually read one of my novels because it's going to take more than 8 minutes to get through that.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's when I used to do my poetry more exclusively and certain novels, that was a more easier thing to do because you're right, that's 2, 3 minute job sometimes. But a novel, like I said, my first novels, it's just under 50,000 words. So it's only a very short novel. So it's that I found it's been hard work, but probably because I know a lot of poets and a lot of other writers from being a writer myself, and also the podcasting. It's made it easy in some ways. But if you're starting up from scratch, basically, it's hard work. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, you mentioned, you said something about your novel Birth, where you have the character writing songs. He's a musician. So you're writing a fictional story about someone who's a musician writing songs.
Yeah,
These songs are they your compositions,
yeah,
like
the mine, yeah,
yourself, or
yeah.
did you make up, or so you're actually using your own compositions at this
Yeah,
person
well,
time?
I made compositions for that book,
That's what
especially
I
as
was
well.
getting
So,
at. You're
yeah,
making up compositions for another fictional person.
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
that was
I,
difficult.
I bet it was. I bet it
It was
was.
difficult. I was having to like trying to imagine what I was like when I was 17,
Yeah. Okay.
and I wasn't the happiest 17-year
Okay.
old. That's why. But yeah, it evolved me really. Just doing homages really
Yeah.
to the way Joy Division were back then when I was 17.
Yeah.
That's what them and a band called the Chameleons and a few other bands, the Smiths as well, another one,
Yeah.
where I was really into them when I was 17, 18. So I was going back, channeling the way I would have wrote,
Yeah. I see.
not
I see.
rip-offs,
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
my own way, but just trying to look at the approach and that. It was really hard.
Okay. Well, have you made an audio book out of it yet?
Not yet. I've got to. That's one another of
Sure.
my hit
That's a
list to
big
do.
project. And the reason I'm asking
Oh,
that is
yeah.
I'm trying to picture, I'm reading a book about a musician, I can relate to that, who writes music, I can relate to that. And so when you're jotting down, when you're writing this is happening in your book, you write some lyrics. That's all you can do. You can't say, well, it's in the key of E minor and then it went to G and all that.
Yeah. No, I didn't get that advanced of it. Like I
No,
said to you,
it
no.
wouldn't even,
Yeah.
wouldn't make for good reading anyway.
No.
That's pretty interesting.
And
But you
look,
did,
to be honest with you, my singing voice isn't great at the best of times. So,
okay, all right.
so it's like I wouldn't want to start doing the audio book and putting the full songs on it because it's
Yeah.
no,
So you're not tempted to actually take these songs and say to yourself, "Huh, well, I wrote it. Maybe I'll actually make a song out of it."
no, no,
No.
no,
Okay,
no,
because
no.
it's written with.
They stay in the book where they belong.
Yeah, very good. All right. Let's see. How long is this book?
It's 50,000 words, so it's what,
Oh yeah.
250 pages?
Okay. It's a fairly quick read then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it took me a while. It took me a while to write this book. It wasn't a quick one to write because, but saying that with most of my poetry books, and they all took years in one way or another. And
Right.
this has been dangling around. Not, I don't get the word dangling. It took progressive rewriting to get it to the way I want it. That's probably the best
Yeah.
way to put it.
And you used an editor and you had a graphic designer for the cover.
Well, it's all a bit of a two-man job, really. But I had
Okay.
a selective team of beta readers. I had
Right.
about 8 people, 8 good friends of mine, all wanted to do it. And
Yeah.
my wife is an editor as well, and
Okay.
she's also a first-rate cover designer as well. She did the
Well,
cover, so and she's brilliant, absolutely
brilliant.
brilliant.
That's just all built in. There you go. There's
Yeah,
your company for you. And when did you start writing the book and when was it finished and published?
it was published on Halloween last year, Halloween 2023. It's a bit of a funny one, this, because I thought I'd started it about seven years ago. When I was doing some archiving on an old hard drive over Christmas time, I found a very rough draft of the first chapter, would you believe, from 2008.
Wow.
So it's gone much further back, and
That's,
even I realized
yeah,
it had
yeah,
to. So you do, sometimes you find that way when you're writing and doing music, anything, sometimes you could end up accidentally misplacing a file.
yes, yeah.
And that's what happened there, because it's like my wife uses OneDrive a lot, and she's had things go into OneDrive and not come back out again. But yeah, it's
Fascinating.
you can surprise yourself as a writer. You really can sometimes.
Yeah, excellent, super. So this is your only novel? Otherwise you have poetry and submissions to magazines. I see that as well.
Yeah, I've got lots. Yeah, I'm on my second novel at the moment, actually, and
Oh,
it's 20,000 words in, so I don't think it'll get to 50. but
Okay.
we'll see. You don't know, don't you? So it's got the cunning title of Death.
Okay. All right.
So it's the direct sequel to the first book.
Birth, death. Sure. People could relate to both of those, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a funny one because it's the second one. It features nearly all the characters from the first book that are still alive by the end of the first book. I think they're
Ah,
pretty well all in it in one way or another.
ah, clever. That's good.
But it's set about 20 years later, basically. So you're looking at when they're all younger people, then how life changes them when they get older.
So true. You mentioned a podcast. What do you do there?
Yeah, well, podcast is very similar to this one, actually. So the mine's called Spoken Label, and I started that baby off back in 2015. And am I allowed to tell you a bit of a mad story how I started this podcast?
Please do.
Okay, it started off a friend of mine. I'm not going to name. Is a sci-fi novelist, or very very good novelist as well. Met up with him in an area called Bolton, back at the back end of 2015. Podcasting hadn't really hit England or the UK by that point, but I knew of it through a day job I was doing, because I was listening to like podcasts and music and stuff. So I was starting getting into podcasting then. And my friend said to me, "You've got a great face for radio. Why do you do a podcast? And I'll be your first guest." So we did this in the pub, and if you can find it, I'm not saying which one it was because it's available. It's 3 hours of me and him getting drunker and drunker. To put it bluntly. Henceforth, I don't drink nowadays. And by the time I got properly into it, about 6 months later, I had the set structure in mind. And then over lockdown, beginning of 2020, I started getting used to Zoom like we're on today. And then it's been like at least one a week ever since.
Okay. So you interview interesting people who do interesting things. Is that
It's
basically?
writers, a lot of creative people, writers, artists, musicians. I've had most famous musician I've had on is, I forgot them, the band now, the band that did Eye of the Tiger. Oh, mine's gone blank.
Yeah, that's a Canadian band, isn't it?
I'll tell you, this is where people are wondering. You see how organised I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I'll
know.
tell
I
you who it
know.
was. Yeah, Survivor.
Right.
That was it.
Right. Okay.
And I interviewed the keyboardist from Survivor. That's the most famous musician I did.
Cool.
And it's like I said, it's just whoever I get into contact with, really, to be honest with you, John.
Yeah.
I think when you get into podcasting, it's a bug, really. And you say you told me already you do loads, don't you? After the one after the other.
Yeah.
There's different ways of doing it, and I just love chatting to people. To put it bluntly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tooting my own horn, I guess the most famous person I've interviewed so far is Penny Rimbaud from Crass.
Oh,
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. He's easy. He's very easy to approach. He's quite an interesting character, and he's getting up in age. So
that's it. Yeah, it must be now with Crass. God,
78 or something. Yes. Yes.
wow,
Yeah.
wow, real one-off, really.
One of
Were
a kind.
pioneers.
Yeah,
Real
definitely.
pioneers. The band they were so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even into punk rock, but something about when I was exposed to that in the early 80s, which was after the fact already. I think they weren't really in existence at that point. And they just captured my attention. I was so surprised that I like it because, punk rock wasn't my thing. Progressive rock was. But anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean with it. I'm always of the opinion with music, and I'm not a massive Crass fan, but I respect the heck out of them because
Yeah.
they really were pioneers. But yeah, I agree with you. Like my music taste has always gone all over the place. I've never stood still. Probably it's the way it shows my creativity, constantly moving forward,
Yes,
looking
yeah.
for the next challenge all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and like I said, I've mentioned like I said Joy Division before. For
Mm-hmm.
me, they're a post-punk band, and I'm not a massive punk lover, but something like that is I love the mood sometimes when you can reflect
The
it.
mood, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a mood man really more than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to get Derek Schulman from Gentle Giant on the show. I'm in contact with him. So he's written a book as well about Gentle Giant, and I'd love to get him on the show, but we'll have to wait to see if he is going to go through with it or not.
Yeah, I think you never know sometimes. Like I said, it's like any kind of band or any artist get on sometimes. Do you in the podcasting game?
Yeah.
You never know because I'm always been like you've done a lot of podcasts like I have. You don't know. Approach people and
Just reach out. You never know.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. You have a website?
No, I don't actually. I do things more so directly for social media.
Mhm.
If you want to read up on my writing, it's on. I use Substack a lot actually. If you heard that page,
Okay. And where
I
can
do a
I
lot.
pick up? Where can I
Yeah,
pick that up?
that's Andy N. Where Andy with Y N .substack.com.
Ah, yes, I saw that. You sent that to me.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
And all my books are on Amazon. So you go into Amazon and type in Andy N. The End of Summer. It'll take
Okay,
you on there, or Andy N. Birth, or whatever,
sure.
whatever.
Now you call yourself Andy N, and I remember we were corresponding, and I just asked, well, what's your full name? And you said, no, it's Andy N, and that's what you like to be called, and I
Yeah,
respect
that's my
that.
stage. That's my
Uh,
stage name. Yeah.
yeah, that's your stage name, and John Christian is mine, even though Christian is my middle name. So I totally understand. Yeah, my last name people can't pronounce because it's Hungarian.
Ah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
mine's quite funny. I'm not going to say. I'll tell you what my real name is. 'Cause I don't mind nothing to hide on it. My surname is Nicholson. But what's funny is my wife. Obviously, we got married about 4 years ago now, and my wife's a novelist herself in her own right. And I said, "For she's a very very talented lady," and when we go around to like say spoken word open mic nights or we read poetry, novels, whatever, she'll go on stage and get introduced as Amanda Nicholson. And then she's inadvertently outed me. But it's what it is, isn't it? So
It is what it is. Sure, of course. Yeah. So, I'm going to ask you how sales are, but what I mean by that is not so much the money. If you make money,
mm,
great, you can tell me about that. But
mm.
what kind of interest have you sparked through the years of your writing poetry and now with this novel that came out last year in 2023?
It's enough to keep me going, to be honest with you. It's if I'm honest with myself, I'm never gonna make a living off it.
Hmm.
It's I think the only way I can make a living off it if my name was Stephen King,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean by that. But yeah, it's been enough where it's encouraged me to keep going,
Hmm.
to build the respect of people,
That's right.
and the respect of it is as much sometimes where you find that when you're doing like you're podcasting for so long, same with the writing and the music, really. There's a legacy there, whether you mean it or not, because I've just shown the punk ethic of DIY. I'm just carrying it on, do it myself, move on.
Okay. Well, I think I know the answer to this question. I was going to ask you, what book do you really want to promote with this particular podcast? It would be
It's
Birth, wouldn't
birth.
it?
It's got
Okay.
to be birth. It's got to
Of
be
course,
birth
of
because,
course.
like I
So
said,
what? Yeah. So why don't you give us your best pitch? Put you full frame, and you can tell the audience who's watching this right now why they should consider buying this book.
I wanted to write this book. It's simply because I wanted to give people the chance to hear the underdog. And that's what this book is about. It's the birth of an underdog, an accidental creative person. And it's the book itself, it is very sad in places, but also poetic, and it's often quite hilarious in places as well. So it's what I'm really proud of this book is you could feel his creativity is almost dragged out of him at the beginning of his journey into fronting a 5-piece acoustic band, and there's so much more going on with this book. It's a book that's rich with adventure. It's rich with craziness because I get the stories in it where he gets locked in the toilet during lock-in in a pub, and then has to climb out before the police come and kick the door in. And it's just there's a lot going on with it. And it's over time really as well because the book is in the 90s really, and find England then was a massively different place to what it is now.
Hmm. And I bet you it was different from the 80s because I'm, I think I'm
Yeah,
about 15 years older than you, so my experiences are all the 80s. And if I remember correctly, the
yeah,
90s, I mean, I'm sure they were fun, but they were different. Yeah,
yeah. Areas are different because
yeah.
Manchester. This book takes place round about the Britpop area where you had Oasis and stuff bursting through. 'Cause I'm old enough to grew up in the late 80s where we had the Manchester scene,
Hmm.
and like I said, I was a little bit too young for some like New Order, Joy Division, the Koreans, that sort of stuff. Although I love them, but the book itself is a little bit after that when a lot of bands are aping like the Oasis and that sort of Britpop thing where it's very jangly guitars and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's just reflecting what I was like as a person at 17, except it wasn't me.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about music, have you seen in your life how English musicians sometimes are quite trying to mimic American sounds. And of course, they come up with
Yeah,
their own sound in the process, but they're trying to be like Eric Clapton tried to play blues. I mean, he does play blues very
yeah.
well. So there seems to be this mimicry that goes on, and vice versa, by the way, in
I
Canada.
think it's vice versa. Yeah,
Yeah,
you look at that back. You look at the Beatles, don't you? Like from Liverpool and stuff like that. They were massively influenced by the blues music, weren't they, from America? And then, like when they went on the older avant-garde side, they were probably the first avant-garde bands, and impacted both England and America really. So it's yeah, it comes both ways because, like I said, before, I grew up loving a band called the Chameleons, and I still do.
oh yeah, yeah.
And their biggest influence was Bowie, and I know they love
Mhm.
Mark Bolan as well from T-Rex. So it's
Yeah,
I think a lot of it crosses over, and when you have, I think it's waves really, isn't it? When you get like a British wave, say, then an American wave, because
yeah,
like America had punk music, didn't they? Before
yeah,
England came over to England, you
yeah.
had Blondie, didn't you? And the Ramones as well, and like even like Suicide and stuff like that. And
That's right.
come to England, I think we probably started off the synth bands. Then you get the rap coming from America, so it's always been a bit backwards and
Oh, it
forwards,
goes even
really.
further back. You know, Jimi Hendrix had
Yeah,
got a couple of players in England, Noel Redding and Mitch
yeah,
Mitchell, session players, British session, and they formed Experience. So that was, I think, the really first hybrid band of its kind.
yeah. I do as well. I think he really did set the precedent for so much music he did.
Yeah.
Like his I adore the 60s singer Scott Walker from a
Hmm.
band called the Walker Brothers, and I've just read a biography of him fairly recently, and I'd forgotten on their last tour, Jimi Hendrix actually supported them,
Hmm.
and Hendrix actually trying to outstage them, set his guitar on fire during his last song and burnt his hands.
Oh no, no. Peter Townsend was very upset at that in 1967 in Monterey, and that's why they totally destroyed their
Yeah,
equipment on stage, because he was very upset at Hendrix for stealing his spotlight. Yeah.
yeah, they do like us. Music's a fun, even get the best of times, but it does
Hmm.
please me nowadays, even if I'm not particularly keen on say some of the top 40 acts that are around. There's always new music coming out. I think the industry we've been so much like fragmented because the internet. Same goes for writers as well. Really,
Hmm.
is there's always new music coming out. You can always find that might really interest you.
Okay. Well, this is a fascinating conversation.
Hmm.
Anything else you want to say about your book before we go?
Buy it,
Okay.
make me rich.
Sure.
Make me rich.
I think we've already heard that. Yeah, of course. Well, Andy, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. This has been fascinating, and I'll have to check
Yeah,
out your music on Bandcamp. I'll put the links of all your works in the description below so people get a chance to get to know you better.
appreciate you, John. It's been a pleasure today. I've really enjoyed it.
All right. You take care now. Bye-bye.
Take care of yourself. All the best, guys.
Thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. You can also subscribe and ring that bell because I release 2 episodes per week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And if you are an author, I would love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.